The heat sits heavy on the red clay, thick enough to taste. A line of German soldiers shuffles forward, boots scuffing dust, uniforms faded by North Africa's sun and weeks at sea. Feldwebel Karl-Heinz Richter keeps his eyes straight ahead, jaw clenched, helmet tucked under his arm. Barbed wire glints in the distance. Watchtowers rise above the pine trees. Somewhere nearby, a truck backfires. An American guard laughs. Richter expects hunger. He expects thin soup, black bread, maybe a ladle scraped along the bottom of a pot. That is how it has been since Tunisia, since Rommel's retreat, since surrender. Instead, the smell hits him first. It is meat. Real meat. Beef sizzling somewhere beyond the fence line. The sound of metal trays clattering echoes from a low wooden building ahead. A mess hall. Smoke drifts lazily upward, not from shell fire, but from cooking. The prisoners halt. Orders barked in English. An interpreter repeats them in German. Remove helmets. Form 2 lines. Richter steps inside the mess hall and stops without meaning to. Long tables stretch wall to wall. Whitewashed boards, tin cups. Piles of food already laid out, steaming. Loaves of bread stacked like bricks. Thick slices of beef swimming in brown gravy, potatoes, pale and soft, spilling over the edges of trays, coffee, dark and strong. For a moment, no one moves. Oberjefreiter Wilhelm Kruger, younger, thinner, whispers without looking at Richter, "Is this a trick?" Richter does not answer. He is staring at the bread. It is white, not the gray, sawdust-stretched bread issued back home, not the brittle ration loaves cut into measured slices. This bread is soft, thick-crusted, torn by hand, too much of it, far too much. An American corporal stands at the serving line, ladle in hand. He does not measure, he scoops. A slab of beef lands on Richter's tray with a wet thud, followed by another. Potatoes follow, then more bread. "Next," the corporal says, already turning away. Richter takes a step, then another, moving by instinct. He sits. His hands shake as he picks up his fork. Around him, the hall fills with the sound of men eating, at first quickly, almost violently, then more slowly, cautiously, as realization creeps in. This is not a single meal prepared for show. This is normal. Across the table, Kruger lifts his bread, sniffs it, then bites. His eyes widen despite himself. "They throw this away," he says quietly. "I saw it, outside, barrels full." Richter chews, swallows. The beef is tender. Not boiled into submission, but fried. Seasoned. He feels something loosen in his chest, something close to panic. He forces himself to slow down, to savor, to understand. Outside the mess hall, an American private named James Holloway leans against the wall, cigarette dangling from his lip. He watches through the open door as the Germans eat. He has been told not to speak to them yet. Rules are rules. Still, he cannot help noticing what they leave behind. Trays come back half full, bread untouched. Meat scraps scraped into bins, coffee dumped out by the gallon. Holloway frowns. At home in Ohio, his mother saves bacon grease in a jar. Here, it runs down a drain. By the second day, Richter sees it clearly. The waste is casual. In the mornings, powdered eggs pile up uneaten. At lunch, bread ends are swept into trash cans. In the evenings, stew is poured out because it has sat too long. The guards do not flinch. The cooks do not argue. Another truck arrives. Another delivery, more food than mouths. Richter begins to count. 3 meals a day, meat at almost everyone. Sugar in the coffee, milk, fruit. Oranges, for God's sake, in Alabama. Back in Germany, his wife writes about turnips, about stretching ration cards, about cutting bread thinner each week. At night in the barracks, the prisoners talk in low voices. Not about escape, not yet. They talk about factories, about trains seen through the camp fences, rumbling past without end, about the size of the American guards, well-fed, careless, bored. Unteroffizier Franz Müller, older, a veteran of Poland and France, says it plainly. "This is not charity," he says. "This is capacity." Richter lies awake on his bunk, staring at the ceiling beams. The smell of pine drifts through the open windows. Somewhere, an American radio plays music he does not recognize. For the first time since the war began, he feels the weight of something larger than fear. He feels arithmetic. The routine settles in faster than Richter expects. Reveille at dawn. Roll call. Work details assigned under a sun that feels heavier than any African desert. The camp hums with order, not cruelty. Guards count. Paperwork moves. Trucks arrive on schedule, always on schedule. Richter is assigned to kitchen duty on his 4th day. Not because he volunteered, but because the Americans need bodies to move crates. The irony does not escape him. A German NCO hauling food for the enemy. Inside the supply shed, the smell is overwhelming. Flour dust coats the air. Sacks are stacked higher than a man's reach. Canned goods line the walls in rows so precise they look stamped into place. Beef arrives in quarters, wrapped in waxed paper, marked with dates and inspection stamps. Everything labeled, everything accounted for. An American sergeant named Collins oversees the detail. He is thick-necked, calm, chewing gum like it owes him money. He gestures with his chin. Stack those by the freezer. Careful with the eggs. Eggs, crates of them. Richter lifts one, surprised by the weight. Fresh eggs packed in cardboard, not straw. He does the math without meaning to. One crate feeds hundreds. There are dozens more behind it. A truck idles outside, another already backing in. Kruger whispers as they work, "This is one camp." Richter nods, one camp in one state in one country. He remembers maps from school, the sheer width of America, the factories, the farmland, the rivers. Later, during a short break, Richter finds himself standing beside Collins at the loading dock. The sergeant lights a cigarette and offers one without looking. Richter hesitates, then takes it. No words are exchanged at first, just smoke curling into the humid air. "You fellas eat good," Collins says finally, almost conversational. Richter exhales. "Better than at home," Collins snorts. "My old man complain if we didn't." He flicks ash over the rail. "Army don't like complaints." That is it, no boasting, no propaganda, just an assumption so ingrained it does not need explanation. In the weeks that follow, Richter notices something else. The guards do not guard food. The watchtowers scan the fences, not the kitchens. There are no locked pantries, no ration cards, no shouting when something runs out because it never does. One afternoon, a shipment of bread arrives late. The cooks shrug and open yesterday's surplus. By evening, the missing delivery shows up anyway. Extra loaves are tossed onto the pile. That night, Mueller gathers a small group in the barracks. He has been keeping notes, mental and otherwise. He speaks quietly but with certainty. "They are not straining," he says. "This is peacetime behavior in wartime." Someone scoffs. "You think this is normal?" Mueller's eyes are sharp. "I think this is margin." Richter understands. Margin means room for error, for loss, for waste. It means an enemy can be sloppy and still win. The realization deepens when Richter is sent on a work detail outside the camp. They repair a road near a rail line. Trains pass every hour, flat cars stacked with crates, tank cars of fuel, boxcars marked with destinations he recognizes only vaguely. Chicago, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, steel towns, grain hubs, names he has seen on captured maps. An American engineer overseeing the crew complains about shortages, not of food but of manpower. "Can't build fast enough," he mutters to another guard. "Factories screaming for rails." Richter grips his shovel tighter. Build fast enough for what? Back in the camp, letters arrive from home. Censored, delayed, thin. His wife writes that meat is now a rumor, that bread is stretched with potato flour, that coal is scarce, that air raids are nightly. Richter reads the letter twice, then once more, slower. He folds it carefully and places it under his mattress. The next day, lunch includes pork chops. Some prisoners begin to hoard. They hide bread under mattresses, wrap meat in cloth. It spoils quickly in the heat. The Americans notice, then shrug. A new rule is posted. No food in barracks. Enforcement is casual. When the hidden food is confiscated, it is not redistributed. It is thrown away. That is when it breaks something in Richter. Not anger, not humiliation, certainty. During evening roll call, he looks down the line of guards, clean uniforms, shined boots, faces untouched by hunger. These men are not elite, they are not special, they are average. And average, Richter realizes, is enough. As Lights Out approaches, Kruger asks the question none of them can avoid anymore. What happens when they turn this fully against Germany? Richter does not answer right away. He listens to the distant hum of trucks on the highway beyond the trees. Constant, uninterrupted. "They already have," he says finally. The shock wears off. The implications do not. By late summer, the camp has found its rhythm, but beneath the routine, something has shifted. Hunger is no longer the enemy. Time is. And with full stomachs comes room to think. Richter notices the change first in conversation. Early on, talk was loud, defensive, brittle, jokes about American softness, about fat guards and spoiled civilians. Now the voices are lower. The jokes thinner. Men argue less about ideology and more about logistics. In the barracks, maps appear. Hand-drawn at first, copied from memory. Supply routes, coastlines, arrows pointing west to east. The Atlantic, once imagined as a moat, now feels narrow. One evening, Richter sits on his bunk cleaning his boots, an act of habit more than necessity. Mueller paces the aisle, hands clasped behind his back. "We were taught that industry wins wars," he says. "But we thought we had industry." He stops, looks around. "This is something else." The Americans, intentionally or not, apply no pressure. There are no lectures about democracy, no forced viewings of newsreels. The camp library fills slowly with English books, magazines, newspapers weeks old but still readable. Some prisoners learn enough English to follow headlines. Detroit increases output. Shipyards launch another carrier. Crop yields exceed projections. Numbers, always numbers. Richter watches Kruger reading a discarded magazine, his finger tracing a photograph of a Midwestern farm. Tractors line up like armor. Silos stretch into the sky. One article mentions surplus corn being converted into industrial alcohol. Converted, Kruger mutters. Not saved, converted. The psychological effect deepens when Red Cross parcels arrive. The Germans expect relief. Instead, the parcels are almost redundant. Chocolate, cigarettes, cheese, items already present in the camp, if not in identical form, then in abundance. The Americans distribute them anyway. The extras pile up. A guard named Holloway, the same one Richter saw weeks earlier, jokes with another private near the fence. Guess Hitler didn't plan on feeding his own POWs, huh? It is meant lightly. It lands heavily. By September, arguments break out between prisoners. Not about escape, but about belief. Younger men cling harder to slogans. Older ones withdraw. Veterans from Russia sit quietly, eyes hollow, as if this confirms something they already knew. One night, a fight erupts over bread. Not because there is none, but because one man tries to hoard it out of instinct. The others turn on him, not violently, but angrily. "Stop it," someone shouts. "You're acting like it matters." That is the moment Richter understands the final insult. The abundance has stripped hunger of its power, fear with it. Without deprivation, the war becomes abstract. Ideology loses its sharpness. What remains is comparison, and comparison is brutal. Work details continue. More exposure. More roads, more rails, more trucks than Richter can count. He sees a factory once, from a distance, belching smoke into a sky that seems too big to contain it. The guard driving the truck complains about overtime. Overtime. Back at the camp, news filters in about Italy, about bombings, about shortages worsening at home. Richter writes to his wife, choosing his words carefully. He does not mention the food, he mentions the weather, the work, his health. He cannot bring himself to describe throwing away bread. In October, an American chaplain offers a lecture on post-war reconstruction. Attendance is optional. Many prisoners go anyway, not for hope, but for curiosity. The chaplain speaks of planning, of surplus capacity, of a future that assumes survival, assumes victory. Richter sits in the back, hands folded. He realizes that for the Americans, the war is a problem to be solved. For Germany, it has become a condition to be endured. After lights out, Mueller speaks again, quieter than before. "You cannot bomb this," he says. "You cannot starve it. Even if you burn every city, this grows back." Richter stares into the darkness, thinking of his son, barely old enough to read. Thinking of ration cards and air raid sirens. Thinking of the casual way an American cook dumped a tray of meat into a bin. Power, he realizes, is not always loud. Sometimes it smells like coffee. Winter arrives gently in Alabama, more suggestion than threat. The cold never truly bites. For the prisoners, it is another quiet reminder of imbalance. Even the climate seems cooperative. Thanksgiving comes without ceremony, at least at first. The prisoners do not know the date until the food appears. Turkey, whole birds roasted and carved in industrial silence. Stuffing, gravy, sweet potatoes drowned in syrup. Cranberries sharp and red. Pies stacked too deep along the serving tables. Richter stands in line, tray in hand, stunned all over again. A holiday meal prepared for prisoners of war, while cities back home ration candles and scrape frost from the inside of windows. An American lieutenant gives a short speech before the meal. It is not political. It is not aimed at them specifically. It is simply habit. He thanks the cooks, mentions being away from home, wishes everyone a decent day. Then the line moves. Kruger laughs under his breath as his tray fills. "This would feed my entire street," he says. No one corrects him. That afternoon, leftovers are stacked in metal tubs. By evening, much of it is gone, dumped, replaced by the next day's schedule. There is no sense of scarcity, even on a feast day. That is when Richter notices something new. The guards are not watching the prisoners. They are watching the clock. Shifts end. Meals are timed. Efficiency governs everything, not emotion. Abundance, Richter realizes, is institutionalized. In December, parcels from Germany stop arriving altogether. No explanation is given. None is needed. The prisoners stop asking. The contrast has become too sharp to discuss without bitterness. Christmas comes next. There is a tree in the mess hall, cut from nearby woods, decorated with paper ornaments made by prisoners and guards alike. Someone plays carols on a piano. The tune is familiar, the words slightly different in English. The effect is disorienting. Dinner includes ham, real ham. Glazed, sliced thick. Richter eats slowly. He thinks of his wife lighting a single candle, of his son, older now, thinner. He feels guilt, but also clarity. If this is what America feeds captured enemies, what must it feed its factories? The answer comes indirectly. In January, a new group of prisoners arrives from Italy. They are thinner, dirtier. They stare the way Richter once did. He watches their faces as they enter the mess hall, sees recognition dawn in their eyes. The cycle repeats. One of the Italians, a sergeant, asks Richter quietly, "Is it always like this?" Richter nods. "Yes." The man swallows hard. By early 1944, the camp receives newspapers more regularly. Normandy is discussed in hypotheticals. Production figures appear almost weekly. Tanks, planes, ships, always more than expected. The prisoners begin to understand the war's end not as a date, but as an inevitability. Mueller phrases it best during a late-night conversation. "We thought morale would break first," he says. "Instead, it is math." Richter writes another letter home. He chooses honesty this time, but not about quantities. He writes about certainty, about patience, about survival. He cannot bring himself to describe the trash bins. Spring approaches, training aircraft drone overhead daily. The sound is constant now, like the trucks, like the trains. Preparation layered upon preparation. The Americans do not talk about victory loudly. They prepare for it quietly with clipboards and schedules and food enough to waste. One afternoon, Richter watches a guard toss an untouched apple into the grass. It lands, rolls, comes to rest near the fence. No one notices. No one cares. Richter does. He understands now why this matters more than any speech. Why no re-education pamphlet could compete with a full tray scraped clean into a bin. This is not propaganda. It is proof. Spring deepens, and with it comes reflection. The prisoners move with mechanical precision. Work details, meals, roll calls. Yet in quiet corners, calculations take place. Mental tallies of crates, trucks, and loaves. Comparisons to the ration scraps back home. Conversations once light now echo with unspoken dread. Richter sits by the edge of the mess hall one afternoon, pencil scratching on scrap paper. He counts the loaves delivered in a week. 3,000, maybe more. Beef and pork, stacked in layers that defy belief. Potatoes in barrels, more than enough for every mouth in the camp, and then some. He writes the numbers down, then multiplies by the dozens of similar camps across the South and Midwest. The totals make him dizzy. Kruger leans over, peering at the figures. "It's endless," he says. "No shortage can stop it." Richter nods. "We thought hunger could win battles. We were wrong." Outside the wire, work crews rebuild bridges and roads. Supplies move as if by magic, endless and unstoppable. Each train that rattles past the camp is a moving reminder of capacity. Engines groan under the weight of steel and crates, carrying not just goods but inevitability. Each crossing of the Mississippi, each truck along Route 82, whispers a quiet truth. The Americans can feed armies, sustain industry, and outlast the enemy. The psychological weight grows heavier than the physical confinement. Prisoners lie awake at night, recalling the meals they have eaten. The sheer quantity, the regularity, the casual disposal of excess. It erodes something they had relied on for survival, the belief that scarcity is absolute. Conversations drift toward war's outcome, something they previously feared to speak aloud. Mueller whispers to Richter one evening, voice barely audible above the hum of the barracks fan. "The front is not only guns and tanks, it is production, organization, abundance. That is the weapon we cannot match." Richter feels a strange mixture of fear and clarity. Fear because he now understands the scale of the machine aligned against him. Clarity because the truth is undeniable. The Americans' capacity to produce, distribute, and waste is itself a kind of force of war. It is relentless, unassailable, and entirely American. He recalls watching Holloway, the guard, throw away a loaf of bread as casually as tossing a stone into a stream. At first it angered him. Now he sees it differently. That act, trivial as it seemed, embodies an industrial certainty that German strategies cannot counter. It is confidence incarnate. It is arithmetic made flesh. By mid-April, the camp experiences a subtle shift in morale. Younger prisoners begin to question preconceptions. Older veterans grow silent, resigned. Even the once lively discussions about heroic actions fade. The overriding lesson, the one that cannot be argued with, is the superiority of capacity. A war cannot be won when your enemy can outfeed you indefinitely. One afternoon, a train laden with crates of supplies halts nearby for maintenance. Richter, given a temporary work pass, observes it from a hill just outside the fence. Crates of food, munitions, clothing, all moving smoothly on steel wheels. The scale is incomprehensible. His mind races. A fraction of this could supply the entire Eastern Front. For months, Kruger shakes his head. We fought for years thinking courage mattered most. Now we see. He trails off. The words hang in the humid air. Richter answers almost to himself. Numbers, Kruger, numbers and discipline. Hunger is a weapon, yes, but only if your enemy runs out first. Even the guards, casual and unsentimental, reinforce the lesson. They are not cruel, they are organized, efficient. Ordinary men, performing extraordinary feats of logistics without conscious malice. The contrast to the rationed, desperate world back home gnaws at the prisoner's understanding of power. As night falls, Richter lies on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the distant rumble of trucks, trains, and planes creates a low, constant rhythm. He knows, with a weight that feels almost physical, that Germany cannot outproduce this, that the front line's victories and strategies pale next to the quiet certainty of abundance. It is not guns that terrify him anymore. It is bread. News of D-Day filters into the camp through newspapers and guarded conversations with the guards. Richter reads the reports quietly, feeling a strange detachment. The storming of Normandy, the vast mobilization. It is heroic, yes, but he cannot shake the parallel vision of food trucks, bakeries, and factories humming without pause. Victory here is not just measured in miles gained, but in calories delivered, supplies maintained, and endless production. The psychological burden becomes heavier as the summer heat returns. Prisoners on work details move along dirt roads repairing rails and bridges. They see Americans in khaki shirts wiping sweat from their brows, carrying crates that seem to have no end. There is no panic, no strain, only the quiet rhythm of preparation, of abundance. Even in their enforced labor, the Germans cannot escape the lesson. This war is larger than any battlefield. One day, while helping unload a shipment of tinned meat and dried potatoes, Richter hears a guard muttering about factory quotas back home. "Can't keep up with demand," he complains to a colleague. "Every week it's more. More trucks, more crates, more everything." Richter's hands freeze mid-lift. That's it. That is the simple truth. America's strength is not just guns or tanks. It is inexhaustible capacity. Even exhaustion will not stop it. Mueller gathers the senior prisoners that evening, a quiet conclave in the barracks. They sit in a circle, hats in hands, eyes tracing the shadows along the wooden beams. He speaks slowly. "We were taught courage, skill, and strategy determine victory. But we see now, numbers, planning, and abundance matter more. The enemy may falter in battle, but never in supply." The words settle over Richter like the humid Alabama air. He thinks of his own unit back in Africa, thin, malnourished, rationed down to near starvation. They fought bravely, but every advance was matched by hunger. And here, the Americans fight not only with weapons, but with bread, meat, sugar, milk, and coffee. The first shipments of the new year arrive. Trains stacked high with crates labeled for European theaters, many diverted for the prison camp simply because there is room. The Americans continue to distribute, continue to waste. Richer, larger portions than ever before. Every loaf of bread tossed into a bin, every tray of meat scraped clean and discarded, reinforces the lesson. One night, Kruger sits beside Richter, staring at the glow of the stove. "Do you understand what this means?" he asks quietly. "Not for us, but for Germany." Richter nods. He does not speak immediately. Finally, he whispers, "We can fight, but they can feed. They can feed indefinitely. Even if our armies advance, even if our cities hold, they will never starve." "Never." Silence follows. Outside, the pine trees sway in the humid night, shadows shifting over the wire fence. Somewhere a train rumbles past, carrying crates filled with the very proof of inevitable dominance. By summer, the prisoners have internalized it. Hunger has lost its power. Scarcity is no longer a threat. Abundance is the weapon. The war, Richter realizes, has been waged not only on the beaches of Normandy or the deserts of Africa, but in kitchens, bakeries, factories, and rail yards. The Americans fight with production. They fight with consistency. They fight with waste, and Germany cannot answer. Even as the prisoners toil, sleep, and endure, the lesson becomes undeniable. Courage, bravery, and even strategy matter, but they are dwarfed by the quiet, relentless certainty of abundance. Each loaf thrown away, each tray emptied, each crate unloaded silently reinforces the inexorable arithmetic of the conflict. Richter lies awake, listening to the distant hum of activity, the constant pulse of preparation. For the first time, he does not think of escape or defiance. He thinks of numbers, of factories, of bread, of the invisible force that cannot be bombed, cannot be stormed, and cannot be starved. This is war, he understands now, in its purest, most terrifying form. By late summer, the prisoners no longer flinch at the sight of overflowing tables or mountains of unused provisions. They have come to expect it, yet each encounter reinforces the scale of American capacity. Richter walks the mess hall during breakfast, observing trays piled high with eggs, bacon, and fresh fruit. Guards stroll casually, carrying trays to the trash bins without hesitation. Bread crusts scatter across the floor. Coffee is poured away in gallons. The casualness of it is almost insulting, if it weren't so revealing. Kruger leans against a support beam, arms crossed. "At first I thought this was luck," he says. "Now I see it is method, precision, calculation." Richter nods. He remembers back home, counting every slice of bread, scraping the last drops of soup, measuring sugar for months. Here, the concept of scarcity is obsolete. The enemy's weapon is not a gun, nor a tank, nor a plane. It is the effortless distribution of nourishment. The Americans do not parade it. They do not gloat. It is simply part of life, and that is what terrifies Richter most. Their confidence is invisible, yet it is everywhere, in every tray, in every crate, in every loaf discarded without thought. This is power beyond the battlefield. Mueller gathers the older prisoners one evening, hands clasped behind his back. "We are witnessing something no strategist could teach," he says softly. "They do not need to attack with artillery. They attack with infrastructure, with food, with consistency, and they have it in abundance, always." Richter stares at the ceiling, the words settling into his mind like concrete. He thinks of the long months of rationing, the nights spent hungry, the endless calculations of what portion would last a week. And now he watches ordinary men, guards, cooks, clerks, perform feats of logistics that dwarf even the most meticulous planning back home. Each discarded loaf, each unused egg, each untouched slice of meat is a silent message. The Americans can outproduce, outfeed, and outlast any adversary. One afternoon, a new shipment of Red Cross parcels arrives. Unlike previous deliveries, these contain luxury items: chocolate bars, tins of coffee, cheeses, and dried fruits. The prisoners, already full from the day's meals, watch the crates being opened. Half of it is immediately deemed surplus and dumped. Richter sees a young guard shrug and toss a box of chocolates into the bin. The act is casual, careless, and yet it carries meaning heavier than any lecture or propaganda pamphlet. Richter feels an unfamiliar mix of awe and dread. The war's equation has shifted. No longer is the calculation solely about weapons and tactics. It is about capacity, production, and relentless abundance. Hunger, the ever-present adversary he once feared most, is powerless here. He realizes that battles, even when won, mean little against an opponent who can feed armies without pause. That night, lying on his bunk, Richter reflects on what he has learned. The war is not solely measured by victories on the front. It is measured in the quiet, relentless ability to sustain, to distribute, to feed without limit. The Americans do not need to fight him in this moment. They have already won this front. Their victory is embedded in food, in factories, in trains, and in the casual way a guard discards what is unnecessary. It is as invisible as it is complete. As sleep overtakes him, Richter makes a note in his mind, a vow, almost to remember this lesson long after the war. A lesson not of bravery or fear, but of capacity, consistency, and the terrifying force of abundance. This is a war he now knows cannot be outlasted by scarcity alone.